Hey everybody, it's Kevin and Marina. We're super excited to see you here from RPH Ally and the Herbalism show today. Marina's got some really cool graphics to bring up, and we have some really interesting things to talk about with tastes and medicinal properties. If you like to cook, if you like food, if you like understanding how food is medicine, this is the episode for you. So we'll be right back right after the reel. Hey, everybody. I hope you had a nice long weekend, hopefully visiting with some family and whatnot. Today, Marina's already got me hungry and wishing I would have eaten a bigger breakfast because we're talking about some different flavor profiles and how we kind of work inside of the medicinal world. But Marina, first, let's talk a little bit more about your podcast so people can learn even more there. And then we do have some fun announcements.
Yes. So my podcast is called the Holistic Pharmacy Podcast, and I am the host, and I am really blessed to get to meet so many wonderful people who are doing something different with their pharmacy degrees or other allopathic degrees, or in some cases, completely unrelated medical fields. But I basically bring them on and showcase what they're doing and how they got there so that everybody else can be inspired and see that there's more than one way to do things. And for those that are not satisfied or fulfilled with what they're currently doing and wish they could do more, this is really the show for you to learn how many other ways you can really use your knowledge.
I love it. And if so, you guys know, like with that podcast she's putting together with those incredible guests, please tune into that. They just very informative. Other things always check out with Marina. She's got 3 different offerings with RPH Ally, which are incredible. She's got a very mini introductory course for you to learn more about herbalism in general, kind of a, let's say for the show, a sampler, so to speak. And then I think there's a mini course, which is really just getting a meal kind of under your belt to get a better understanding of what it is. And then the full meal deal of having a longer period training with Marina. So all of those things are ready for you to consume. But for us to consume today, Marina, we're talking about taste, and you let me know when I can bring these images up because one of them is looking at me and is quite the image to see.
Yeah, so let's start off with the tongue and actually get into the taste receptors that we have. So you might know that there's 5 main flavors, and then now they're also talking about a 6th, which is called umami. And on this map, it would be that center area, and it overlaps with some of the others. And so these are the general areas. And as you can see, there are some overlapped in between even these identified areas. And, it's not an exact science of where exactly each receptor is, but those are the general area where you could expect them to be. So I want you to just start off with being more mindful of where you can sense these flavors on your tongue. And this directly ties into the medicinal properties or what phytochemicals may actually be present. And this exactly ties into the conversation from last time when we spoke about how plants have certain energetic qualities, and they could be like a net sum of the phytochemicals in those plants. And so how we can glean this interchange is on the interface between how we sense them via taste, and it really starts in the mouth and on the tongue. And this is why we love looking at the tongue in Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic, and other practices. So we look at the actual tongue, and then also we use that tongue as that first. Sometimes the smell is another way that we can inform ourselves. So we can use all of our senses, right? But in this case, so you can smell and you can taste the medicine. And the smell and taste are also interconnected because they inform our nervous system through the cranial nerves about what we're sensing. And the trigeminal nerve is also highly involved. So what we're doing here is we are interacting. So literally, I have another show scheduled about pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics, and this is that interface. And this is why we talked about there's differences between each person who's consuming the plant and the plant itself and the condition that we're trying to balance. So it's literally the synergy and the interaction between these things. You have to interact with medicine. The medicine has to interact with you. So we have to look at both. And so the tongue is a great way to start that process and to understand that wow, the taste is actually informing us of what the medicinal qualities are and these properties are. So when you're eating, when you're tasting your medicine, when you're drinking your tea or your coffee, try to notice from now on, what exactly are you sensing? Sometimes it helps to close your eyes or get into a more relaxed state, which you should be in when you're eating or drinking anyway. So this is really a practice of being mindful. This is what we do in tea ceremonies, where we really just try to notice without going into full mental mode to try to identify it. But the first thing is really awareness. So what are you tasting? Where on the tongue are you sensing it? And what does that then inform us of? So this is a really cool practice that I have learned from herbalism and wanted to introduce today. And so the back of the tongue, as you can see, is the bitter taste. The sides, all over the sides, is sour. And then the tip is sweet. And then like from the tip outwards is the salty areas. And that centers the umami, which is kind of like that feeling of protein rich or nutrient rich meals, with the savory taste buds.
So I'm over here literally like drinking my coffee and just trying to like get all these flavors. How do you get better at it, Marina? Because for me, like getting the flavors in different locations and like really receiving like what the coffee tastes like, what the creamer tastes like, where it's hitting. How do you do it? Like what's the trick to be able to have your tongue sense things like that?
Well, I would say it's really a matter of time, like slowing down and savoring. So that
Mm.
mindful presence. And that's what plants teach us as well in general, is to slow down, because they function at a much lower, slower speed than we do. And especially in our modern, constantly, restless, things calling at our attention, all of these computer tabs open all the time. So the first thing is just to quiet down, to
Are you
slow
making fun
down.
of my tabs there, Marina?
Mine too, mine too. And so it's to quiet down and be present, and that takes a lot of mindfulness and intention. And then the second thing is practice, right? So you just practice and practice, and then you start to discern more and more.
Awesome. No, I think that's super helpful just to be able to consume food slower is an important part of a lot of dietary plans and appreciating like what you're actually eating. I mean, I don't think I've drank my coffee that slow in a very long time, Marina. So thank you for that. I actually tasted some of the bitterness, some of the different sweetness and the different places it hit the tongue. And so that was actually more interesting to drink my coffee that way. And I may start doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you notice where the bitterness was in the tongue? Did it correlate?
It really did. I mean, I'm like now the after effects of like the bitter sour region in the back of my tongue, like I can feel that the sweet, like the sweet elements. I'm just so naturally sweet. I guess I don't notice it as much on the tip of my tongue, but that's what I was really trying to go for. But can you educate me on this? If some flavor profiles are a little more overwhelming, is that the sensory elements you're going to have the most highlighted? Because for me, back of the tongue in that bitter sour region is where I'm getting most of the like sensation.
Mm. Yeah, so that's exactly where the interface becomes like, this coffee could be the same for everybody in your house, but everybody could have a different association, relationship, and taste with it, because they're, biochemically different from you. And also they have different memories associated with it. And then also their sense of smell is coming in, and smell and scent is related to memory and all kinds of associations, right?
Awesome.
So this could, bring up feelings of peace and joy for somebody, and it could be very, overstimulating and remind people that, oh, okay, I drank this when I was stressed out at work or something, right? So it can be different depending on so many factors, but we say that taste is part of the medicine. So that's why herbalism is about consuming everything in the crude form as much as possible, and having it start at the opening of our gastric passageway, and which is where the tongue is, because these receptors are not solely in the tongue, they're also located throughout the body, but this is where it starts, and it's a really good jump start to your system to be able to taste it. And then this activates the other receptors downstream. So if we're optimizing the interaction and the interface upstream, we really can affect the downstream effects. And then there's a whole bunch of pH and chemistry and all kinds of activation going on the muscular level and the chemical level as we're digesting this medicine. And so if we're tasting it and noticing the taste, and sometimes we say like the worse it tastes or like the more intense it tastes, like the better it is for that person, because your sensitivity to that taste, it tells us, it informs us that this is either the perfect thing for you or the worst thing for you. So sometimes it's confusing, but usually if you're like picking up on the sour taste or you're craving sour, that means your body's telling you that it needs that sour. And what does that mean if it craves sour? So the sour taste is associated with actually the liver, in a lot of different medicines, and specifically in Chinese medicine, let's say. And that's like a toning action. It's like vitamin C rich and astringent. So it's like really helpful for the blood vessels. It's really helpful for our liver and detoxification. So maybe this is a sign that you need some help in those areas and your body's like craving that flavor. Or sweet is one that so many people crave, right? And so what does the sweet mean? The sweet means we actually crave nutrients and nourishment. But if we're filling up our bellies with ice cream, that's not very nutrient dense. So you're going to keep craving it and getting empty calories. But if you actually fed it good polysaccharide and starchy vegetables with lots of different micronutrients, then you would be satisfying that flavor and actually getting what your body's trying for you to get, which is the nutrient content. And salty, we crave salty. Salty means minerals, and it's associated with the kidneys and the water. So this is all interconnected, and our body's trying to get us minerals, and sodium, right, is a mineral. And traditionally, we would eat or consume these things. There's lots of herbs that help clear out the lymphatic system, and they have a salty profile, and they also help us clear out our kidneys. And we know water follows salt. So, those two have to be in balance as well. So those are just some examples. But you may notice, Kevin, that one flavor here is missing because it's not considered one of the main ones. Do you know what that is?
The umami?
No, the umami I mentioned, it's not on here, but another one besides it. So like taste number 7.
Salty. I don't. What am I missing?
Spicy, right?
Oh, yeah. I love
spicy food. Yeah, it burns the tongue. So there's been some controversy, but it's not considered a main flavor. And if you want to go to the next picture, this is because it's been shown that this pungent and spiciness is a non-specific taste receptor association. It's actually a form of us sensing a presence of chemical, which is called chemesthesis, or the sensing of a noxious or potentially noxious substance. Right. Or it also alerts our thermodynamics, right? And thermosensing. So we can sense a sort of like heat, right, from the spiciness. So what it's doing is it's activating a non-specific receptor that generally informs us of these other senses, of like the thermo, the heat, the cold, the numbness, all of these kind of senses. And you could kind of tell, when we talk about rubefactions, right, or counter irritants topically, those are the same sensations that these receptors are picking up on internally. And so there's a couple of different classifications, and one of the main ones is a vanilloid type receptor, and there's a whole way of, how it gets activated. So it's really fascinating, but I pulled up this article and I could share it with whoever is interested to learn more. But there's lots of literature on this. And so there's just examples of like how plants with these constituents are activating these non-specific receptors, and then what the sensation is, and then how that translates to the action as well. Wow. So it's both to protect us from the noxious, potentially, chemicals and poisons. And also the bitter taste is another one that alerts us that there may be an alkaloid, and there are some potentially toxic alkaloids, like atropine, for example, or glycosides like digitalis that are bitter. So we don't want them. We don't want the very toxic bitters, right? Which is why we have like an inherent dislike of bitter foods, most of us. But also there are some bitters that are beneficial and they stimulate our digestive function. And we literally call them as a category bitters. So bitter herbs that are actually really helpful for us to stimulate our peristalsis and everything I spoke about before. And so it's a really fascinating world of like associating what is the phytochemistry, what's the quality, what's the energetics, and what's the taste. And if you want to go to the next image, we have ways, like, for example, this is a way to envision it from a Chinese medicine 5-element theory perspective, where each flavor is associated with an organ and a lot of other elements, and what we talk about in Chinese medicine and how each of them either supports another flavor or holds it back, sort of. So it either feeds it or takes away from it, and then it regulates each other. So all of the tastes are interconnected, and then they all help govern and balance our organs and our health.
Wow. Yeah, I've got about 1,000 questions for you that I'll have to ask you some other time, Marina. But the one thing that I really wanted to concentrate on is the way you talked about the tongue is something that I don't ever remember covering ever throughout school. And the one interesting thing is all of our medications are coded. Like we have something to be able to bypass that initial mechanism for us to sense like what matters about this and how is it going to affect my body. And we literally put it in a capsule or some kind of sugary coating so that we can bypass that first almost level of defense and recognition of how we should process it. And so that is very fascinating to me in lots of different ways. And then I think too is just understanding the importance or the connections potentially between each one of these taste or flavor profiles and what they do mechanistically in your body and what they may or may not upregulate or downregulate, which is super fascinating. I mean, when you're talking about food as medicine, like this is taking it to an entirely different level because literally you are tasting it and it is causing your body to do something based on taste alone. I'm a little jaw dropped here. I'd love to say that I have something to say on the tip of my tongue, pun intended, but I don't. I think it's something to really contemplate and chew on for a little bit. And this is a fantastic episode, Marina.
Yeah, keep the puns coming.
I can't help it. It's just part of my DNA. But no, I think that's fantastic for the overall, I think, review of just understanding the very tip of what we're looking at here. Any other kind of takeaways or any other things to go with next time? We need to have another episode on this. I guess that's where I'm stammering.
Yeah. The tongue is just could be a whole course, maybe even a PhD type course of what we can learn about the health of a person. If you start looking at people's tongues, they tell a really big story because it's the only organ that you could physically see from inside the body. It's an organ. And yes, it is associated with like the cephalic phase of digestion and the first actual phase of digestion. And it's really, really fascinating. And the digestion, of course, is key to so many things that we take for granted.
Oh yeah. I think this is just absolutely fantastic. Okay. So another episode coming soon on this to go even deeper on everything. Anything to sign us off with, Marina? We've got a big conference coming up in May 5th through the 7th. So join us in the Healers and Healthcare Conference. Join us over on Marina's channel and the Herbalism channel on RPH Ally and check out the courses she already has ready for you to rock and roll with and a lot of the content she's already doing on her podcast. Did I miss anything, Marina?
Yeah, so we're thinking about moving this show over to RPH Ally. So everybody who's enjoyed it and wants to see more, please comment below and we'll send you the link to head over to our channel.
Awesome. Now I look forward to seeing you guys there. Marina, always so good to see you. Everybody have a wonderful rest of the day and chew and drink a little more slowly today and see if you can enjoy that and see the difference. Talk to you guys soon.
Bye.